Now let's move right on into the next session, a fireside chat focused on investment strategies for pediatrics. This discussion brings together an international panel with perspectives from the United States, the European Union, and the UK, offering a truly global view of how investment in pediatric innovation is evolving. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. David Cole works across the continuum of children's health as a commercial and strategic advisor, senior leader, mentor, and venture partner. After a 24-year career at IBM leading digital transformation across global healthcare, he now focuses exclusively on innovation that improves the lives of children, young people, and their families. He is also the co-founder of the UK charity Thinking of Oscar and host of the Not Many Adults podcast. David? Next, we have John Parker, managing director at Springhood, has spent the last decade as a pediatric-focused investor, backing 26 biotech, medtech, and digital health companies dedicated to transforming the health and care of children. He leads 2 specialized pediatric investment funds, Springhood Ventures, where he is founder and managing partner, and CH Innovations, the venture arm of the Charles H. Hood Foundation, which has supported child health research and innovation since 1942. A welcome to John. And Marc Ramis is the founder and managing partner at Montana Children's Health. Marc is a scientist turned life sciences entrepreneur, passionate about building innovative ventures and currently centered on pediatric innovation as founder and managing partner at Montana. He has co-founded and advised multiple ventures across London, Boston, and Barcelona, including Chasing Science, Deep Science Ventures, and Ship to Be Ventures. With a PhD from Oxford and a PhD from Harvard, Marc has led several therapeutic startups and played a key role in translating science into impactful companies. I now invite Marc, come on up. So we hand it over to David Cole.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us here. Thank you for having us. I think this is a great extension to the session that we had yesterday around investment in pediatrics, and hopefully we can give you a bit more insight as to what the investors are looking for, what the market looks like at the minute, and what have you. The first thing I thought would be good just to understand, so we know our audience, is how many of you are startups? How many of you are looking to raise funds at this point in time? And how many of you from hospitals, how many from institutions helping these startups? How many of you are investors? Okay. And how many of you are parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles who have an interest in children's health? Right? That's why we're all here. So the first question I'm going to put to these guys is, what's interesting? What are you looking for at the minute? What do you see in the market that's kind of whetting your appetite for to want to have more conversations? John?
So there are a few things that are really interesting right now. And again, we think about children, and look, this is all of healthcare for a certain demographic. So, and the funds that I run will look at things across all of healthcare and life science for peds. So biotech, medtech, digital health. So we're looking at a lot of different things. So a couple of the examples I give seem, they're very different from each other. But a couple that really got my attention these days, and they have for a bit, are really good pediatric first models. So where can I find a company that has an innovation of some sort that they're trying to bring to market that is a better investment because it's pediatric? And that usually involves, I mean, it's either tackling a beachhead market, maybe there's less competition. Very often it means we can get to market faster and cheaper by going down that pediatric route. And there may be all sorts of other things the company can do to enhance the investment story, but it will get to that afterwards. We'll raise money at a higher valuation after we have proof of concept in human and we've tackled the tough problem. So I look at a lot of investments in that space. The other area two areas that are really interesting are going to be the theme around AI and software right now, and in particular, I'm interested in decentralization of healthcare. So how do we bring specialist tools to generalists? And we're starting, it's very early in that game, but we're starting to see some really interesting technologies that will bring healthcare, pediatric care back to the community, lower costs, make it easier for parents and the kids to get the care they need faster and, again, cheaper, more easily. The last thing that is I always think about when I'm looking at investment, that's a theme that I really try to focus on, is are you creating a solution where there will essentially be a moral imperative to buy it? That means it's not an incremental Me Too kind of solution. Is this something that is demonstrably going to change health outcomes for kids, where it's a process, it takes some time to get into the marketplace, but once you start to see that it is working and you're getting that initial clinical buy-in, does everybody else have to buy it because it will become the gold standard for care? So that to me presents a nice investment case where, okay, at a minimum, if this thing works, somebody's going to buy it. So those are the areas I lean into. Marc?
John, obviously you've been doing this for a little while, so you've got a different perspective. But Marc, you're coming into it in many instances. So what are you going to look at in terms of your first investments? What's going to attract you?
What John is saying, basically. But for us also, as we are, starting to analyze many projects in Europe, especially, and taking into account that our fund is extremely focused in very early stage on the tech transfer process, company creation. And in addition, what John is saying, one area that is particularly interesting for us comes from after deep, but I will try to summarize analysis where you can see how in Europe population is aging a lot. So you have like more old people, and that is stressful for the healthcare system. At the same time, and I will try to keep it very short, also the budget for other things in our society is going to be increased in the coming years. So this is, again, stressful for other departments as healthcare. So that, and Serrano was saying that before, preventive medicine becomes something that was not at the same area of interest or priority maybe 15, 20 years ago. And if you think about preventive medicine, is where children's health becomes something not only a need, but also a very interesting opportunity, especially in Europe, and how the healthcare systems are built in Europe. Okay, so for us, anything related to prevent something when you are still a child, but that will become a huge problem for the health, not only for the patient, for the adult, but as well for the healthcare system in the future. It's an area of interest for, I don't know, how you identify earlier and in an objective way neurodiversity and what we can do about it in the society, how we identify and how we can prevent obesity from very early stage. So these areas associated with new business models in preventive medicine is an area that we have particular interest.
And I think we'll come back to some of those kind of specific areas, especially around AI, given some of the conversations that we've just had. But some of the things that we don't necessarily discuss, it's always great. We always talk about the new technology and the great product and the innovation that's coming out. But there's more to it than that when it comes to investing. There's more to it when you choose who you want to work with. What kind of other things are you looking for in terms of the team or the individuals? Because that's an important part that I think we kind of miss. We discuss it, but I think we miss it when we're talking about it in more open forums.
One of the things that I think happens in the pediatric space a lot is that there's been an invention that is hitting a clinical need. And it's something that, yes, you can see it works, and you know it can be helpful. And so everyone says, well, somebody has to fund this. But from an investment point of view, there are a lot of these things that, yes, maybe it can solve a problem, but there's not a business there, so we can't get there. So we still have to look at these projects through an investor lens. And I think it's really critical to understand when I encourage people who have these great ideas and maybe looking at starting a company, or maybe they have done that, but understand, what does it take to get all the way to the finish line, to attract money? And if you're going to take other people's money, you need to have a good story for how you're going to get them that money back with the returns that they expect. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that, and it's similar to what most people in our shoes would probably look at, and it is around a good business plan. It is around good people and team. People always talk about that, but not just, it's the team today, who can get at this stage, and is there a willingness with that group to understand that maybe the best group to bring it forward in a year or two, maybe once you've gotten through regulatory approval and you're starting to commercialize, that may be a different team. So how are you going to hand over what might be your baby to somebody else to run? It's a hard and sometimes torturous process. But the earlier you think about these things, the better investment and company you will create. So then we do all the other diligence and all those things too, from the science to, how just operations, but.
And Marc, how about you? I think one of my favorite authors is Simon Sinek, and he says you've got to work with people who believe what you believe, right? That's why we're all friends, we work together, but you need to look at that when you're looking at making investments as well.
I think for us, we also like to think about three aspects that we analyze when we like to see a deal. Again, at very early stage, you deal a lot with academics and clinicians. Most of you, some of you are, and normally this type of people are really smart on what they're doing, okay? But being smart on what you are doing doesn't mean that you are smart managing a company. And a big mistake, lesson learned, is considering yourself also kind of still have the head of, it could work. Sometimes it works, okay? But statistically speaking, still being the PI of a fantastic group and whatever hospital, and as well the CEO of the company who's making the decisions, doesn't work. So this for us, building a team where you have a resilient funder, because normally funders in children's health are very resilient, with experience building companies together, is the formula that we like. And also we are, and this is the second thing, sorry, not three, that we like to analyze from the very beginning, even this is something that is just starting, is having a clear exit strategy, okay? Funds, venture capital is not philanthropy. They get in to get out. So you need to tell them how to get out, because I'm not going to get in if I don't have a strategy to get out. Because at the end, 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, that's the case, okay? So if you are looking for philanthropy or for other type of funds, that's fantastic. But for venture capitalists, that's the case. So having a clear exit strategy that academics, clinicians, funders, they understand from the beginning is becoming also really important for us. Yeah.
And so there was a lot of trust that was put into us that we'd actually, kind of prepare for this session, and we thought about it, and we thought maybe we should do a little bit of it. And one of the things that we thought that we would lift the lid on a little bit was it's very easy for people to put their hand up and say, we're an investor, we've got a fund, but where does the money come from first, right? The investors need investments, and that is not an easy place to be at this point in time. John, talk to us a little bit about limited partners and the difficulties, the challenges, but also the really opportunities that we get from people looking to invest in this area and looking to invest with the expertise that you can bring.
Yeah. Marc and I probably have shared experience here. What a lot of, especially I find a lot of entrepreneurs don't always appreciate that for groups like ours where we manage a fund means we are bringing in money from outside. So we are doing the same thing that they're doing. We are trying to go out and convince other investors, institutional investors above us who will be limited partners in our funds to invest in our dream, our narrative, our story. And in some ways it's a little harder because we can't point to the product yet. We're going to go out and do that in the future, and we can point to things we like and things we've done in the past, but they have to take a leap of faith with us. So in an area like children's health, where there isn't a huge track record out there in the marketplace, we need to convince people that we've got, which we believe very deeply, but that we've got a really good story. We've got a...
If I may say something, and that's been a kind of a nightmare for us, because they were asking, okay, you are building this fund in Europe. What is the track record of other children's health funds? No, there's no track record. We are the first one.
There's one guy in the U.S.
Yeah, there's one. It's John. So that was what actually I was telling people, no. And it's like developing a first-in-class drug, no. You know, let's imagine the first ADC, no. So they are not how it works. The other ADCs. No, it's the first one. So we share many experiences on that, because it has been extremely challenging because of that, because this kind of the new modality of investment, what we are, building all together as a community. Yeah. So.
No, it's a great point. And I think we both, early on, to get these things off the ground, you do have to find those people who are like-minded in nature. And when I'm going out to investors, I'm not expecting somebody to invest in my fund looking at it and say, oh my God, that's the best way to make money I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't expect that. Those people can go look at crypto funds or whatever they're going to do. So, but we try to engage with people who believe in the mission, but understand that we are trying to make money around this mission. So it's a slow process. It's a lot of education. And I think we're getting there. We are looking for more engagement from, and this is true in the States, it's true in Europe, it's true in other parts of the world where there are capital resources, but we want to find people who will say, hey, I'll take a chance on that because the mission's important, but I'm not viewing it as philanthropy. And this is a bit of the rub that makes it really tricky, is to convince people, I want you to invest, but I want you to invest because you think it's important too. If you want to think about it as, I don't care if I lose my money, that's fine. But I don't want to have a philanthropic discussion. I want you on board with me as somebody, as an investor who will hold me accountable to trying to get returns around that. So that's important, I think, to share with the institutions, folks in hospitals who may be looking at things. I'd love to get more support around this idea from the hospitals themselves to invest in not just their things, but the broader ecosystem, foundations and philanthropies that are interested in children's health. It's an area where we, as they say, it takes a village, and we need a village to help us get there, to create the track record and more wins, so that there are more successes, and that will attract more capital and more good investments and all that.
For me, this one is also a very interesting point, because so you are fundraising, and basically you are building trust on moving people from venture philanthropy to impact investing. But at the same time, you don't want to damage venture philanthropy because it works, and children's hospitals, Liverpool, Barcelona, all of them, they have to continue receiving philanthropy to produce as well pediatric innovation. So you don't want to damage that. At the same time, you need to convince more traditional family office, venture capital, that they are used to invest to have a much higher return of investment. So you are bring together from two different worlds into this scenario. And for me was really extreme, because my previous job was in longevity. So longevity, huge market, and raising was completely different than in children's health. No, I was doing that as an entrepreneur, but as John was also saying, when you are a fund manager, you are also fundraising for another type of vehicle. No, and for me, this space that at Chip2B Ventures is the firm that is managing the fund. They also have this experience before in other areas like climate change, and they are, building this ecosystem of impact investing, no? And children's health it has to be included in this modality, and comes from people who are coming from philanthropy, people from other sources that they think that this is actually the best modality for a better world, but you need to educate them to do advocacy on that, and that's been the challenge. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think we've had a number of conversations this week, but we had many conversations around startups saying we found someone that wants to invest. But similar to what we've just discussed, in that it's not something they've done previously, so they want someone to come in with, they want someone to hold their hand, they want someone to come with reputation. I think one of the messages that we were discussing was bring them to these kind of forums, bring them to the table, let them see and hear the conversations that we're having, and let us, progress those together and help them to feel that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that it's, we can bring the village, we can make it all work, right?
Yeah. And look, I think it makes for better investments. It's better for the companies, better for investors, and increases the chance of success if you can bring in different kinds of investors and funders. I mean, look, sometimes you just have to go and get money because you have to survive, and we all understand that. But when I'm looking at something and I can go into investment where there may be other investors say, I need somebody who understands pediatrics. And so I can fill that role. But I might go and look at it around a specific technology because I'm a generalist across pediatrics. I want somebody who really understands whether it's a biotech or medtech, but whatever, they really know that technology or that modality really well. Maybe it is bringing in an impact investor around a disease out of a disease foundation, but they know that disease really well. And so you bring together a group of investors that can sit down and help at that board level to really move that, support that company in their journey. And that's, if you can get that kind of investor group around a company, you start to get really excited. And hopefully the entrepreneurs feel the same way. It's like, oh my God, I just got this team around me. I didn't just get money, I got a team.
Very interesting syndicate for entrepreneurs, because if you are raising, I don't know, for a startup in childhood cancer, a great combination is a pediatric impact-focused fund, but as well a fund that is dedicated to childhood cancer, like the one in the UK with the See Farther and LifeArc. And if you are, there's also from other patient associations, they have their own funds in type 1 diabetes, in Alport syndrome, and so the combination of these foundations that they are also moving from not just donating to R&D, but as well to investing in the startups, because patients and families, they are starting to understand that they need to do this next step to get the drug. And with more generalistic children's health funds, I think this combination and it's fantastic. And then you can prepare projects for bigger Series A and B, where large, you see on the news in the last weeks that there are big funds now in Europe that they are more focused on Series B and Series C, doing bigger rounds, and then you can basically work on the project to then scale up with them for reaching not only maybe pediatric indications, but as well adult indications, and but you need that initial step, and then partnering with this type of other type of foundations and capital. That's a great combination.
Let's change tack slightly. John, can you talk to us about some success? We've heard about selling the foundations, but let's hear about what's worked and where you've seen that success story.
Yeah, I'll pull on one that probably goes of my list of things that I look for investments. This is one around sort of moral imperative and having a novel technology that it creates a market in and of itself, and so there's moral imperative to buy it. And somebody you just spoke with, but a company called Propella that we invested in a number of years ago. We were really early in this, and actually it's unusual in that we remain the only outside investor they have. But this is a company, and for a little bit of backstory, it's essentially an infant sleep device. It is a technology developed out of Harvard's Wyss Institute, a stochastic sort of randomized vibration that goes into a bassinet pad or a mattress for a baby. They originally, when I first talked to them, they wanted to go out to the consumer market. We'll help your baby sleep, and that's great. And parents pay anything to get their baby to sleep. So it sounds like a really good business proposition. People just hand us money if we can make their baby sleep. But I look at that and say, you're going to have to raise $100 million just to do a marketing campaign around that. It's going to be very competitive. And why is anyone going to believe you that you can help their baby sleep? What they had, though, was some really interesting data around being able to settle and soothe opioid-exposed babies. So the syndrome called neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome, which when we're starting the opioid crisis was front and center in the United States. So we looked at this and said, look, this is only, and at the time we were thinking about 50,000 babies. We've been able to up that number, unfortunately. And so it's a little bit, but it's still a small market, tiny little market. But they had good data, and we saw a path to a huge amount of non-dilutive funding because this was a priority of the government. So we put in a small amount of equity in this company. They were early. They ended up, on the backbone of our investment, raising about $10 million of non-dilutive funding, and that's gotten them all the way through. And so after doing multiple studies, and now they've expanded into other areas, apnea premature, respiratory diseases. They've learned a lot about their product. And they just got through the FDA with a de novo approval. So the de novo is a really interesting thing because that means there's no predicate. It's new, it's novel. And everyone is looking at this and saying, okay, we've got a device that can get a baby through the symptoms of opioid withdrawal in 2 to 4 days without using drugs, which is currently what tends to happen. It's low cost and it's non-invasive. Like, how can we not use this? Now, they still have to sell and commercialize, and it's not as easy as that. But when they got their approval on this from the FDA, the phone started ringing from strategics, which is, oh, that's really interesting from an investment point of view. So that's been a really good success story. It's not quite done, but we are at the point where even sort of in worst case, this is a big success. And it brings a lot of these things together because they've created a totally new modality for treating this syndrome, and lots of other places to go, including at some point going back to that consumer market, because now they have proof they can help the toughest babies in the world. So.
And shameless plug. So John and Propeller are going to be on the Not Many Adults podcast in the next couple of weeks. So
John Conson, the CEO, not me.
The CEO, John. And I was actually one of the best pieces of advice that he gives during the podcast, a bit of a spoiler alert, is to always think about that exit strategy. And it's to not try and create the next trillion-dollar company. If you want to expand, work with the people who know how to expand, who know how to get it into market. And I think that was one of the key things that we took from it. Marc, I don't know if you've got any anecdotal examples. I know you're early in this.
Well, I think I have a case that it's also familiar here. That is the company Paediatrics. It's a company was founded, I think, more than 10 years ago here, spin out from the Barcelona Children's. And if you think about 10 years ago, our pediatric ecosystem here in spin outs in Barcelona was, okay, here at i4Kids, I feel at home. I can say that 4 years ago when we did the i4Kids, the number of people, the audience was completely different than today. Okay, so we are growing and growing the ecosystem. So let's imagine 10 years ago, okay? And this person was not even a clinician. The founder, Juan, was not even a clinician or a scientist. He was a person with a motivation, and he has an idea, okay? Not data, zero data. And today, we are already doing a trial in children, okay? 10 years later, I've been in the company from the beginning. You cannot imagine the journey. Almost closing, investors say no, just adult indication, crowdfunding, all modalities of investment, foundation, but still here. And a couple of months ago, we were able to use that idea from 10 years ago into a child, no? And the company has already also a phase 2 trial in pancreatic cancer. Data is really promising and potentially a great business as well. But the resilience of the founder may happen that the children trial is happening today, because I can tell you, I've been with him in several occasions where the easiest way was not to take that route. So for me, that's a success. Resilience until impacting really in the children, and then business, obviously, yeah.
So we've got a few minutes left, and I just wanted to touch on one of the subjects that we've heard already this morning, which is AI. So if you have an AI, supposed AI, but let's hope AI, organization that comes to you, a founder, what would be the reason why you would continue to have that conversation?
You want to start?
It seems that you have to talk about the AI always, no? In a call, in an event. I can tell you, for me, I was in a meeting actually in the UK where this professor, she's been developing a very interesting objective way to measure pain in babies 0 to 3. And I love the project, but he was telling me, now we call that artificial intelligence, but we have been doing that for the last 15 years, and we have we have a huge amount of data on that. So for me, in front of EI, because I can tell you on our deal flow, every 2 proposals, 1 is EI. I pay attention a lot on the background, on who is producing that EI and the experience they have on the particular indication, because you have really interesting approaches on childhood obesity with EI, neurodiversity. There are many things going on, and it's very difficult to see what is really there's something there, no? And that's why I can tell you about EI, to be honest.
John?
One of the things I think about with AI, because yes, there's so much out there, and there are a lot of AI companies with grand dreams of all the huge problem they're going to solve, or how they're going to discover all these drugs or all these things. I've started to think more about, and what's interesting to me is the AI tools applied to maybe smaller problems and maybe some of the less sexy problems, but they tend to be the ones that are more in the last mile of the process than the beginning of the process. Again, I see tons and tons of things around drug discovery, but you still then have to go out and do the trials and go through regulatory process and manufacture and all these things. What's getting really interesting to me is some of the tools that, say, on the drug side, may be reducing costs of manufacturing, streamlining a trial process and regulatory. This, to me, creates, we have lots of good assets to test in people and in kids, but can we lower the costs? And this is really important in the pediatric space, because I think when we think about investment returns, we're not looking to create bigger markets. We don't want that. We don't want to do sick care. We want to get into more preventive things or tackle things like cancer and rare disease and get it early, and that market shouldn't grow. So we need to change sort of the denominator in that equation and lower costs if we're going to improve the economics of our investment. So I like tools that focus there. When I think about sort of the other side, again, it's sort of getting closer to the back end of it. I like this idea of decentralization of healthcare, which I mentioned before, which is getting solutions, getting good medical care close to the patient. Can you enable your generalist pediatrician to act like a specialist? This is where I think globally, with the increasing burden and cost of healthcare, we have to get to that to just make it so that it's not so difficult and expensive and time consuming to deal with our basic healthcare, which we all need and we all want, but it's becoming more and more difficult. So I like those last mile solutions more than sort of the big dream things. Oh, I'm going to create something that's going to solve all the problems all the way, from beginning to end.
So we're nearly out of time, but we did use AI just to see what should we be closing this session with, and ChatGPT said, where do you think we should be in 5 years? Marc, where do you think we should be in 5 years?
5 years, hopefully, for me, my vision is that I will be sitting there and other funds, pediatric funds, will be sitting here, hopefully leading by women as well, and we will be more in a I4Kids 2030 again in Barcelona, and it will be a more mature ecosystem where competition between funds it's good, and there's and the idea that the deal flow is small or is a niche market, it's complicated, will be out of the question, and we will be in a next stage, and I think we will be there. Yeah. Quite optimistic.
You totally stole my last line in terms of I'm going to give you the last
because I
word.
checked the eye.
No, in terms of us not being here and us being out there and having new people, especially women on this stage. So, but I'll give John last word.
No, I mean, mine's very similar, which I look at. I want to see out in 5 years that track record having been more established. I want to see more funds. I was encouraged watching the women's health space, where 10 years ago there were almost no funds, and now there are a bunch of them. And I just saw in the press earlier this week that somebody was starting a fund of funds for women's health funds. That means there are enough funds to do a fund of funds. That's fantastic. So I want to see a fund of funds for children's health funds, because there's so many of us and we're doing so well. But that right now, that requires a lot of early support. But the deal, look, the investments are out there. The innovators, the entrepreneurs, they're there. We do need to just pull the story together and attract the capital and roll up our sleeves and work really hard to make successes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much to our speakers for this insightful and truly global conversation on pediatric investment.